Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first lockdown live stream. No, not a lockdown live stream. The first Elephant Professional Lecture of February 2021. As I have said many times before on these professional lectures, there are very few things in life that give me such great pleasure as when a scientist who has spent time with us and early on in their career goes on to great and bigger things and continues to push forward the knowledge of elephants, knowledge of elephants in general anywhere around the world, and elephant intelligence and cognition in particular, because it's just one of those things we can take. I hate to take some credit for it, but it's really nice when people who start and spend time with our elephants are inspired to continue their career with elephants. And so today we have one of our speakers who has done just that, one of our ex-research assistants from Think Elephants International, who has done just that, Lisa Barrett, who is now working as a postdoctoral fellow on animal behavior in Oklahoma City Zoo, which is, she's just told me, is open and ready for visitors if you would like to go and visit. The study that she's performed is another aspect. The study that she was looking at when she was here was on elephant cognition in Think Elephants International. And the study that she has just performed and had published looks at another aspect of their intelligence and how they may be able to solve a problem. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I've read the paper and I don't want to tell you what the answers are. But without further ado, I'll hand you over to Lisa, and she can tell you all about the experiment and how it worked and how clever elephants are. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back in a sense. And thanks everyone for listening wherever you are today. So like John mentioned, I had the pleasure of living in the Golden Triangle for about a year from 2013 to 2014. And I had the pleasure of working with John and the elephants at the Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation and learning about their important mission while I was a research assistant for Think Elephants International, which is a nonprofit led by Dr. Josh Plotnick. And here are some pictures of me and the other research assistants. And in this top picture, this is one of my favorite memories, which is when Josh took us to a special buffet in Chiang Rai on Christmas Day. And I really enjoyed every minute of this experience. It was my first job out of college, and it prepared me for where I am today, which is pursuing a career in animal cognition. It even prepared me for wearing a mask when I go outside because burning fields is a common practice in northern Thailand. But in all seriousness, it was a really wonderful experience. I loved doing research with the elephants, and we also led educational programs for adults and children about elephant biology, behavior, and conservation. And here is a picture of some Thai students playing the Losing Space game, which is like musical chairs, but with newspaper, to illustrate how humans and elephants have to compete for space. And I also got to experience the amazing Thai culture while I was there, including special holidays like Songkran, which is essentially a water festival held to celebrate the Thai New Year. Here's a picture of our research facility where we studied various cognitive abilities in the elephants with the hope of understanding how elephants perceive and interact with their physical and social environments so that we can use that information to mitigate human-elephant conflict, such as by designing more effective deterrents. So we gained a lot of practice in designing animal cognition experiments. We also studied vocalizations or recorded vocalizations to study communication. And with studying elephants and designing experiments for them comes repairing apparatuses. And so that's what Elise is illustrating here. We even had the help of our research subjects. And importantly, we worked with the mahouts to bring their elephants to research. And if the elephants wanted to engage with our experiment, which is basically a stimulating puzzle for them, then they would get a reward for participating, the elephants, not the mahouts. So here's some delicious grapes. And it was through this research that I really got to know the elephants, and I started to get curious about their individual differences. So here are some of the Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation elephants I worked with. I was really fascinated by the differences among the elephants that was driven by individual factors like their past experience or their personality type, how much they like bananas, or how quickly they picked up on our experiments. And it was these individual differences that drove me to then pursue a PhD studying elephant behavior. I conducted my dissertation in the Animal Behavior and Cognition Lab at the University of Wyoming, led by Dr. Sarah Benson Amram, where I examined elephant personality, innovation and learning, and social learning. So today I'll be speaking with you about our research on social learning, but hopefully I can come back later and talk to you a little bit about personality and innovation if John will have me back. So what exactly is social learning? Social learning is learning that is influenced by observation of or interaction with another individual. And so in this case here, you might learn from someone else's mistakes without having to have the experience of getting pulled over yourself. You know that there are police in the area looking to pull you over. And so obviously it can save you a lot of time and trouble to learn from someone else instead of having to figure something out on your own, which can be costly. In this case, you can get a ticket. So if you've ever struggled to set up a new printer and you decided to just Google it and watch a YouTube tutorial, then you know what I'm talking about. You kind of go with someone else's experience. So you might encounter something new and want to look to your friend for how to deal with this new situation. It might not be the right solution, but you follow them because you know they might have a bit more experience than you. If you've ever seen your favorite celebrity drinking a specific beverage, then you might be more likely to buy that brand when you're at the store. Or you might look to your parent to figure out what to eat when you're young, like this orangutan. And children actually imitate us all the time. Another well-studied example of social learning is how some birds learn their song. Usually juvenile males will learn from their father to ultimately use this song to attract a mate later in life. And so throughout development, the birds will fine-tune their song. Asian elephants are very social. They live in fission-fusion groups where juveniles will learn from their mothers and their aunts to use their trunks and learn what food to eat when they're young. And they live in these herds that are led by a matriarch who is known to be a repository for social knowledge. And the herd will follow the matriarch to find food and water in different locations at different times of year. We also know that elephants keep track of where their herd mates are. So elephants clearly exhibit complex social behavior. And for example, Plotnick and colleagues demonstrated that elephants can cooperate with one another to retrieve an out-of-reach food reward. So in this example, elephants learned that they needed to pull on two ends of a rope at the same time in order to bring a platform holding food closer to them. So this shows empirical evidence of complex social cognition in elephants. And it's possible that social learning could even aid in the spread of potentially harmful crop raiding behavior in wild elephants. Now, if you're not familiar, crop raiding is when elephants invade farmland to gain access to crop resources. And this can be very dangerous on both sides, as many elephants are killed by farmers who are willing to defend their livelihoods, and many farmers are killed by elephants. Researchers have found that elephants who associate with crop raiding males are more likely to exhibit crop raiding themselves. So in this network graph, the filled in circles are crop raiding male elephants. And you can see that crop raiders tend to associate with one another. So social learning could be responsible for the spread of this behavior among elephants. And more recently, wild elephants are beginning to raid crops in groups. perhaps because single raters are met with more dangerous consequences than group raters. And by understanding how a behavior is transmitted among a group of animals, we can better understand social learning mechanisms and the spread of potentially harmful behaviors in elephant populations. Since we can't give an animal an IQ test, we test their cognition, including social learning, with challenges like puzzle box tasks. Just like a puzzle task you might give to your pet dog, which has parts that must be manipulated in order to retrieve a food reward inside. Here is a puzzle box for wild hyena, where in order to access a tasty steak inside, the hyena must move a latch and open a door. Now, not many animals are problem solving in isolation, so it's important to consider social learning, especially in social animals like hyena or elephants, where we can study how animals learn to solve a puzzle by watching another animal solve it. To test for social learning, oftentimes animals are separated into demonstrators, observers, and controls. Demonstrators perform the solution on a novel puzzle box task while observers watch. And then observers have a chance to solve the task. And if animals are using social learning, we would expect observers to be better problem solvers compared to control animals who did not receive a demonstration before receiving the task. And we can test for different forms of social learning, like imitation, where animals copy the behaviors used by the demonstrator. But social learning does not always mean imitating someone else. There are other forms of social learning, like stimulus enhancement, where you're more interested in something, like maybe a product in the grocery store after seeing someone else interact with it. And this is what was found in a study of captive African elephants. Elephants were more likely to interact with a puzzle box task after watching a demonstrator elephant interact with it than were elephants who did not observe a demonstrator. So here I'm showing you observers in the gray bars and control elephants who did not receive a demonstration in the white bars. So you can see that observers had a greater initial interest in the task. So how do we test for social learning in elephants? It can be difficult to think of a puzzle box task given elephants' size, strength, and unique trunk morphology. But given that they're in and out of the water all of the time for bathing, and given their ability to move water with their trunks, this offered a unique opportunity to see how elephants perform a standardized task that's typically been used with primates. And this is the floating object task. This is a very common test for causal understanding of water displacement and the ability to use water as a tool. So in this, animals solve by adding more water to a column. So in order to reach a floating peanut here, this orangutan solves by spitting water into a tube from her water bowl. And you can see she has an observer watching her. And this task had never been tested outside of primates or corvids, which includes crows, until recently when Stanton and colleagues found that it could be adapted for use with raccoons. So we wanted to see how elephants would do on this task. We thought elephants would be well suited for this task because they are capable of using tools, such as sticks for scratching or positioning blocks for standing on them and grabbing out of reach food, and even blowing air to bring out of reach food closer to them. So in our study, we asked whether social learning facilitated performance of Asian elephants on the floating object task for the first time. And we had a few predictions about what we would find. So we expected that elephants might use imitation, a form of social learning where observers use the same behaviors as a demonstrator. Or we expected they might use stimulus enhancement, where observers would spend more time interacting with the apparatus compared to control elephants. And we expected that if elephants solve the task, they would solve faster across trials, which would indicate evidence of learning. So to test this, we collaborated with 2 US zoos, the National Zoo and the Oklahoma City Zoo, to use this demonstrator observer control setup with 12 Asian elephants, where observers had an opportunity to watch a demonstrator elephant solve the task, and then had a chance to solve the task on their own, and then another demonstration for 3 back and forth. And control elephants received 3 trials on the task without any demonstrations. The elephants were presented with the apparatus tube filled about 1/3 of the way with water and baited with a floating marshmallow reward. So how did the elephants do on this task? All of them were interested in the task. They investigated and touched it in their very first trial. But only one elephant solved the task on their own. So at the National Zoo, Shanti added water to the tube, but did not fully solve within her first trial. And then she solved in her second trial and every trial after that. So I'm going to show you a video clip of Shanti's second trial. And this is sped up in the interest of time. So here Shanti's adding water drinker to the tube. And she'll add a little bit more so she can reach the marshmallow at the top. So then Shanti solved in every trial after this and could be a demonstrator at the National Zoo. At the Oklahoma City Zoo, Chandra, our chosen demonstrator, did not solve the task on her own. So with the help of keepers, we clicker trained Chandra so that we could carry out the social learning portion of the experiment at this zoo. So here Chandra is learning to add water from a hose to the tube. And next, she learned to add water from her drinker. And soon Chandra began solving on her own and could serve as a demonstrator. So here she is demonstrating for a younger elephant. So no other elephants solved the task, neither the observers nor the controls. However, for Shanti, who was the elephant who learned to solve the task on her own, we can actually see evidence of her learning the task. Here I'm showing you trial on the x-axis and latency to solve on the y-axis. And you can see that Shanti's latency to solve, or how long it took her to solve in each trial, decreased across time. And this suggests she learned to solve, which supports our prediction that solvers would solve faster over time. We also found that on average, observers at the Oklahoma City Zoo tended to spend more time interacting with the apparatus compared with control elephants who did not receive a demonstration. So this suggests an effect of stimulus enhancement, which supports our prediction for finding evidence of this on the task. And here, in case you can't see, the orange bar are controls and the gray are the observers. However, at the National Zoo, controls spent more time interacting with the task. But we attribute this to the fact that Shanti, who's the one who learned to solve on her own, was included as a control elephant before subsequently being used as a demonstrator. And when we exclude Shanti from our analysis, this comparison is no longer significant. So we found that there was no evidence for imitation on the task. And we did find evidence for stimulus enhancement at the Oklahoma City Zoo. And we did find evidence for learning by Shanti. So Shanti learned to solve faster over time. But why was Shanti the only solver? Maybe it had to do with her previous experience. So anecdotally, keepers knew that Shanti may have an affinity for adding water to things, since she had been observed previously adding water to her enrichment. And so after carrying out our research at the National Zoo, we considered that this pre-existing tendency to add water to things could explain success on the task. And so to test for this in future trials, we added a control initial task for all elephants at the Oklahoma City Zoo. And in this control trial, we asked, do elephants add water to an unbaited and dry tube? So there's no water and no marshmallow. And here we assumed elephants would not add water to the tube because they would not smell a food reward inside. And so in this unbaited dry tube, since Shanti was not tested, unfortunately, we can't be sure if she just likes to add water to novel items. But we hope future work can add this control trial at the very beginning of testing. And before we knew that Chandra was going to be clicker trained on the task, we gave her this control trial and she did not add water in this control. We also carried out 2 other control trials at the end of testing that allowed us to further assess the elephant's understanding of the task. We asked, do elephants add water when the tube is baited and dry? So in other words, there is no water, but there is a marshmallow at the bottom. And so here we were seeing if elephants would add more water to the tube than they would have needed to when it was presented 1/3 of the way full. And both Chandra and Shanti added the sufficient amount of water to solve in this control. Then we asked, do elephants add water even when they don't need to? So when the tube is filled of water and there's a marshmallow floating on top. We saw that Shanti successfully retrieved the marshmallow without adding any water, but then she continued to add water to the tube after retrieving the reward. And so this suggests that Shanti did not fully understand the task, or that adding water itself is rewarding, akin to play behavior. Or maybe she was attempting to get more marshmallow, especially because marshmallow disintegrates in water and there could have been some sugary remnants. Chandra, on the other hand, did not add water after retrieving the marshmallow. So this could be because she learned how to solve the task through clicker training. And with her training session, she actually had more time with the task overall than Shanti. And so maybe with more time, Shanti would have fully grasped the task. But with so few successful elephants, we can't really conclude or make strong conclusions about the cognitive abilities involved in success on the task. So we did find that elephants are capable of solving the floating object task for the first time. However, only 1 elephant solved, so we can't say too much about their level of understanding. Also, Shanti's performance was likely due to her previous experience adding water to things. And we found that elephants can learn to solve the task faster over time. We found that stimulus enhancement may be important for elephants, but since we only found stimulus enhancement at 1 zoo, if you recall, it was the Oklahoma City Zoo, this led us to wonder if relationship to the demonstrator could play a role. So although captive settings do not always mimic natural herd dynamics, in the wild, elephants tend to learn from an older matriarch. So it might have been unlikely for some of our observers to learn from a younger demonstrator. It's possible that the elephants just needed more time. So maybe 3 demonstrations wasn't sufficient for them to imitate the solution. Or maybe they weren't paying attention to the demonstrations, even though they were facing them at the beginning of the trial. It's also possible that the quality of the demonstrations differed in some way. So if you recall, Shanti learned to solve on her own, and Chandra was clicker trained to solve. So it's possible that Chandra was more rigid in her behavior and more consistent in her demonstrations. And maybe that's why we found evidence of stimulus enhancement at Chandra's zoo, but not Shanti's. Although we didn't notice any differences in quality of demonstration, there could have been something going on that we didn't perceive. So this study lays the foundation for future work on social learning and on the floating object task with elephants, hopefully with a greater sample size and more trials. Our study shows that the floating object task can be used for suitable species outside of primates, but unfortunately it would have to be substantially modified to be able to test other groups of animals that do not have the specific morphological capabilities like trunks that are required for the current version of the task. After all, in order to accurately measure the evolution of cognitive abilities like tool use and problem solving, research paradigms should be modified for testing with a wide array of species. So designing paradigms for species that rely on different sensory modalities and morphologies, and not just those that are traditionally the focus of comparative cognition. Another factor we didn't consider here, but we are looking at in another study, is whether personality influences problem-solving success. And this actually reminds me of a sign that I saw in Sri Lanka outside of Udawalawe National Park when I was visiting the research team at Trunks and Leaves. I cannot read Sinhala, but I was told that this sign says something along the lines of, "Do not feed this elephant. If you're caught feeding this elephant, you'll be fined," or something like that. And I couldn't help but wonder if, you know, what is it about this elephant that makes him an elephant more so than other elephants? Could there be something about him in terms of his personality that kind of helps him be able to acquire extra resources from humans? In fact, in the wild, due to habitat loss and fragmentation, elephants increasingly come into contact with farmland, and they attempt to exploit this novel food source of crops. But there's variation in terms of who crop breeds, and there's variation in terms of how successful they are in crop breeding. And one form of individual variation that could be playing a role in crop breeding is personality. Personality could predict ability to solve a novel problem, like how to overcome a barrier to access crops, or how animals habituate to deterrence. And social learning, such as stimulus enhancement, could be responsible for the spread of crop breeding behavior. So future work could determine which traits are characteristic of problem individuals and super spreaders of bad behavior to target intervention efforts, like tracking certain individuals, or for profiling captive elephants to determine ideal candidates for reintroduction. So with that, I would like to thank my funding sources, my research assistants, and all of the elephant team members at the National Zoo and Oklahoma City Zoo for their incredible help and support, without whom this work would not have been possible. So thanks very much for your attention. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Lisa. What a fantastic study. I love it. And of course, first thing I can say is, yes, please do come back and tell us more about the other aspects of your work sometime in the near future. We're always looking for elephant professional lectures, and we're lecturers. So if anybody would like to, anybody is an elephant professional and would like to lecture for us, you're more than welcome. We go every Wednesday. The next question, I think anybody who knows me knows what I'm going to ask, and my team are probably rolling their eyes and hoping I'm not going to ask, is, can we do an extension here? Can we do it? It looks such a fascinating study.
Yeah, you definitely can. I think it would be interesting to compare with your elephant.
I mean, I think so too, in a larger number. I mean, one of the things that has happened during COVID, we've managed to take in 3 extra elephants. Prior to one of those elephants coming, we knew the elephants liked the roots of one of our invasive plants, the mimosa plant here on site. But it was only really Bo, one of our larger elephants, who knew how to pull them up, and she had a very inefficient method. As far as I can tell, this is pure observation. I wish we documented it really, because I've been looking at the elephants quite a lot recently on the lockdown live streams. And then this one elephant turned up, Camun, and she had an extremely efficient way of uprooting the mimosa. And I swear I'd never seen any other elephant turn around, because the first time I saw her do it, she wrapped her trunk around it, she got it in her teeth, and then she just slowly applied the pressure and pulled it up and ate the root. And then slowly, and again, we didn't document it, which is stupid of us. I started to notice other elephants doing it very, very clumsily at first, to the point where now we've got 3 or 4 elephants who are really very good at it. And that has to be a similar thing, but again, we should have documented it anyway. But yes, let's talk about how to do an extension. I'd love to see if it's possible, and see what we can do here. So the next thing is, if anybody has any questions on the Zoom group, please do unmute yourself and ask a question. No questions at all. We've got a good audience in the Zoom group. Okay. And if not, I I don't know if Boo is out of her meeting yet. Boo, are there any questions on Facebook? Or did you cover everything so perfectly, Lisa, that there are no, I have to say, you answered most questions. Let me have a look. I can check the Facebook group as well. I don't see any questions here either. So yeah, I mean, I think my other thought is I just think Shanti likes moving water around, which, as you say, which is why she filled up the thing a bit more. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We were interested to see because we also tested her son, Condola, but he didn't solve it. He's at the Oklahoma City Zoo now. So it would have been cool to have Condola watch Shanti, but yeah, that didn't work out.
Okay, cool. Well, I think, yes, it would be very, what would be interesting to do a study here is we could do a mahout. We could ask the mahouts there. We could do a behavioral assessment first of all on what they like doing and what their habits were, and then to see if we move forward. Okay. Oh, now has a hand up. So fire away.
It would also be interesting to see if they paid attention to the mahouts solving the puzzle.
It would. I think, yeah. I mean, I said we've tried that before and they don't. But if it were food involved, that's yes. That's another nice idea, isn't it? Okay, cool. We have many things to discuss over the next little while. But anyway, we will hand over to who has a question.
Hi. Actually, we have a few questions from Facebook. The first one from Matthew is quite long, so forgive me if I say something wrong. But yeah, the question is, if you had the ability to choose demonstrator elephant over again, would you have done the same process, or would you have proactive elected for an older demonstrator like Rex or Bamboo?
Yes, so we ended up using demonstrators based on if they solved. So we started, testing Shanti and she solved, so she became the demonstrator. But if an older elephant had solved, that would have been ideal to use an older elephant as a demonstrator.
It is a good point.
It's possible. Sorry.
Yeah, so if you would train, if it's to the point where you trained another elephant, it would be interesting to, although they take longer to train, maybe to train a matriarch. Or I'm just trying to think which elephant we would train as a behavioral leader here if they didn't solve. Sorry, back to the question.
And it's also possible that it wouldn't be very relevant for an older elephant to learn from a younger elephant. I don't know if I saw that already. Jacqueline has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Jacqueline.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hi.
I did have a question, kind of going back to more of the issue with the elephants on kind of encroaching on those farmlands. In one of my classes recently, someone was kind of mentioning there's actually different types of fencing that being used to sort of help with those issues. I can't remember the exact name of them, but I guess they're pretty successful with kind of helping with that issue. I just wondered if you knew a little bit more about those, like if they are very successful, or if there's like issues that come with those as well that there needs to be maybe some like added help in.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that there's been work done looking at beehive fences. So elephants don't like the sound of bees, to simplify it. But they also have tried using chili pepper bricks, and John probably knows more about this too. And I think there's been recently a lot of success with using, I don't know what they're calling it, but like strips of metal swinging on fences, because it gives like multiple cues to the elephant, and they don't like the feeling. It's a sound and it reflects the light.
We have lots of different things being used and going around the world. Actually, Jacqueline, if you have a look at some of our back catalogue of elephant professional lecturers, we've had a few people. It's called the Kaisani fence, I think, being used in Savo. Lynn von Hagen came and told us about that in a professional lecture. So while we can't answer all the questions, if you have a look at some of our previous previous speakers, including Dr. Lydia Tiller, who's another ex-Pink Elephants research assistant from Sabo. We do talk a lot about that in some of our previous lectures, and there's a bit of work going on here that we'll talk about a little bit later on to look at other sorts of fencing as well. So it's a massive subject to answer your question, Jacqueline. But have a look at some of our previous lectures, and you'll get some answers on that as well. But I guess the long and the short of it is at the moment there's no perfect solution. Different fences, different solutions seem to work in different areas, and almost always, because the rewards for crop breeding are so high, one or two elephants will figure out a way around them. So it's an online arms war, or an ongoing arms war as to how to move up and to keep elephants out of crops.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I'll have to look more into that.
Oh, do you have another question?
Yes, of course I do. For Sharon, one question: do the elephants realize you are studying them?
I think that question's from my mom. Hi. I think that they do understand that something's going on at the zoo. They definitely know I'm a new person in the barn when we're doing research. And I'm not sure they know that I'm doing a study, but I think they are, well, I like to think that they're excited to get a new puzzle, something stimulating to like a new enrichment item for them.
Yeah, when we have new enrichment for elephant, they're all excited about it and try to figure out. So yeah. Another question from Matthew. Do you remember if Shanti's trials were closer to the start or the end of data collection? If it was closer to the end, could a build-up of factory queues on the drinker and tube contribute to a means in realization between the two?
I think she was tested near the beginning, but we definitely think that olfactory cues could have played a role in, well, we hoped that it would play a role in social learning, as elephants rely more on their sense of smell and sense of hearing. We hope they would pay attention to those cues the demonstrator was giving. But yeah, I don't think that would have affected Shanti's ability to solve.
Okay, I don't see other one, but sorry I missed at the beginning, but do you think like if we do the test with younger elephant, will they try to solve the problem like quicker or better with the old elephants?
Yeah, it's possible. Our youngest observer was more interested in the task than older observers, but observers, all the observers were higher than controls at Oklahoma City Zoo. So yeah, it's definitely possible.
Okay, great.
Other question?
Oh,
yeah, one more. Give me time because my screen is quite small. Have you seen variation in problem-solving ability related to the level of enrichment at different zoos? And do you think that affect their success?
That's a really interesting question. That's not something that we, kept track of. We didn't record how much enrichment they were getting at each zoo, but that could definitely have contributed to interest in the task or, ability to solve. I would love to test that with a greater sample size, more zoos, and, somehow keeping better track of that if that's possible. Because yeah, it could be contributing to their experience level when they go into the task.
And no more question from me, but I think we have more sample at Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation.
Yep.
I think we do. Sounds like something we should definitely talk about. Okay, well, thank you very, very much once again. As I say, lovely study. Many exciting things to think about, and they're very, very interesting as to whether Shanti solved it by accident and then went on to do it. But I think, yeah, let's keep talking and see if we can actually do extensions here and things like that.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no trouble, no trouble. And yes, do come back and talk about the other aspects of your work sometime in future. You have our contact, so we're always looking for lecturers. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for viewing our coming to our elephant professional lecture. Oh, okay. So Sarah's saying great presentation.
Thanks,
wasn't
Sarah.
a question. And it was a great presentation. Thank you very much for coming to our elephant professional lecture. We are going again next Wednesday as well, I think at the 5 p.m. time slot, and we'll give you more details on that over the week. Please do join us for our our daily weekday lockdown live streams, which are at 7:30 in the morning Thai time and 4 p.m. Thai time every day, hanging around with our elephants, where you'll be able to see my suddenly noticing what I think might be social learning, which is very, very, very different from this rigorous scientific study. But at least I can throw anecdotes at you about what we think we see happen between our developing friendship groups in the grassland. Elephant educational live streams on the weekend, the supplements from the team about going behind the scenes, and maybe a Thai language one as well, or two coming up a little bit later on. So please do join us. Like and share the Facebook page, and then click that little button that gives you an alert when it goes live. All of our videos, including this one, will be left on the Facebook page, so you can look through our back catalogue. And if particularly Jacqueline or anybody else look at the Elephant Professional tag, we have had a lot of great speakers down the week since we've been doing this. So there's a lot of information up there for people on all aspects really of elephants. So please do have a look at that. And I guess that's about it. If you happen to be in the States, do go along to Oklahoma Zoo and have a look and support them, because the elephants there and all the animals are in need of support. And if you happen to be in Thailand, please do come and visit us here in this lovely, unfortunately slightly empty elephant bar at Anantara Golden Triangle. It's morning time. I can see some elephants down there in the grassland. You could be perched up here drinking your coffee and watching the elephants. And being here helps us keep everything turning over and helps us keep the elephants fed and all of our projects going. Until 4 o'clock this afternoon, for those of you who like the lockdown live streams, or I think 5 p.m. next Wednesday for the next Elephant Professional. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much once again to Lisa for joining and for giving us a fascinating lecture, and for the work that you do as well. And yeah, that's it. We will see you all a little bit later on. Bye.
Thank you.